Dave found to put in there that just when I watched it, it's just like it then transcended what that scene was and made it something else completely, or just added to it, you know, added this level of anxiety that was just like, wow. It was something I would, you know, you'd never be able to put across in dialogue. And, you know, usually up till now, like in Clerks and Mallrats, we've had music or songs in the movie, but they haven't really, you know, brought something up to another level. And this is the first time it was like, wow, it's complemented and then improved it.
Was the Ray Charles song your choice?
Yeah, that was something I was pretty big on from the start, but I don't know if we're going to get that, man.
They're getting, I think Rhino is doing like a 4 or 5 CD set. Maybe it's an 8 CD set of Ray Charles. It's complete.
The publisher who owns the song,
the estate of the husband who wrote the song, the tune,
of that particular song,
is giving us a hard time.
I mean, because it's like Somewhere Over the Rainbow, right? It's the Wizard of Oz song, and here I don't think they wanted it.
They probably want as much as your budget to put the movie.
Well, they're actually not even really even getting into the money. They're just sort of backing off from doing it at all. You know, so I mean, that from the beginning we were all just sort of like, is it going to happen or is it going to happen? I mean, that's the tough thing about throwing music into a film. Like, when you start throwing in source stuff, it's like, you gotta go get the clearances. We were just talking about today, and like, a lot of the people just, they don't care. You know, a lot of people can care less, whether it's in your film or not.
Well, the Clerk soundtrack is a great soundtrack. I mean, you know, I mean, it holds it on its own, you know.
Right.
I mean, you just, we're playing it, and one of the things I really liked about this film, and you know, hats off to Dave, was just the fact that the new songs I heard in the film were things that I wanted to hear again. You know, the kind of exciting songs. It's like, oh, I kind of like that.
Yeah, it's definitely.
And the Ray Charles was a good touch. I noticed that because it did that moment kind of started to choke you up. You know, and when the Ray Charles kicked in, it was like it was almost no holding back. Right. You know, that was like the kind of thing that pushed you over the edge.
Exactly, and then you know, it's just it does that thing again. It complements, and then also, you know, accentuates or pushes the scene to a different level that performance and dialogue can only take it so far, no matter how good they are, and then all of a sudden music just like locks it up.
Yeah, that's a lot of the problems when it comes down to music, and like Mallrats never really had it is, in Clerks, you know, we're going through the music, a lot of it did is like sometimes it's hard to match the sensibility of the film with the music. You know, to sort of, you know, with Mallrats basically it was like an all alternative punk rock bunch of songs, and that's not who we are, and that's, you know, it doesn't really capture the sensibility. It's too like over here, and it kind of like with this one, it has a, I mean, Dave really got in there and did something that the movie does, is do something different as opposed to doing the obvious.
No, I mean, and I'm a big fan of Soul Asylum. I remember, I mean, they played here in Houston in the late 80s, in the mid 80s, you know, or late 80s, and they were like a band that would always, like, they might do like a show of covers. They were that kind of a band. So I'm really glad to see them make it out of all the bands that stuck together out of the 80s, you know. When you're, you know, putting together the movie, when you're writing the movie, do you like, you know, analyze the parts and go, okay, you know, there hasn't been any good scenes written about pussy eating, and I need to make this the pivotal, because that, you know, that's going to get this film a lot of flack. I mean, I'm sure there's somebody in Washington right now who's got a copy of the script or something. Look what they're saying here, you know. Oh yeah, you know, the whole fist thing, and certainly was a surprise to me. You know,
to me, it's like I'd just like to see stuff on screen that I haven't seen before, you know, or hear conversations that we pretty much have every day in our lives, you know, or with our friends and whatnot, but you don't necessarily see it reflected up on the screen. And ideally, you know, movies kind of hold a mirror up to the culture, you know, and kind of they show you up there. And it's just so funny that, you know, nobody really talks about that stuff, and it's such a part of daily life, you know. It's some might say it's the focus of daily life.
Yeah, you know, we're all driven by one thing or another,
Exactly.
mostly one thing, you know.
So, you know, to me, it's interesting to see it up there, and also you don't want to just do it for the sake of being graphic. So you mix it up with humor, you know, because it is, you know, it's funny. It's when you talk about it with your friends, it's funny. There's a time to be serious. There's a time not to be, and when you got a bunch of people sitting around a table talking about eating out or eating chicks out, you know, and one of them's a guy and one of them's a girl, it's just like ripe for humor, you know, and it was just I like the idea of of doing it like as the scene in Jaws where the guys sit there and compare their scars, and that's why I was just like, wouldn't it be funny if they were sitting there comparing scars they got from eating girls in it? So.
No, I mean, but that moment, I mean, that moment in the film is almost so hilarious, you know, that it's hard to recover from that, because anything, you know what I mean, it's like you keep waiting for another barrage like that, you know.
But yeah, one for a movie. that's
well, even the scene at the convention at the beginning with the black character. Yeah. Has he been in your other films, or
no, Dwight, the actor.
Okay.
No, it's the first time we worked with him.
No, that was really good too, you know, because you don't know where that's going, and then he turns out to be, you know, a fairly realistic gay character.
Right.
You know, I mean, so you're certainly not going to get any flack from people going unrealistic gay characters.
Right. It was, you know, I met Dwight through a friend, and I just thought he was really great. I was like, I gotta write this guy a part in the movie, man. So I just happened to be starting to write Chasing Amy, and I remembered Dwight, and I put him in there.
So you mentioned that you almost fell asleep during Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back, obviously. So are you going to go out and see Return of the Jedi?
No, I'll go see it. Like Empire, I was wide awake for. Like I said, it's such a great movie. But Return of the Jedi is, you know, it's good for the first half hour, and then it starts to, you know, go downhill.
It has that chase through the trees, which I thought was incredible. But.
So and plus, you know, now I've seen like the other two in re-release won't be complete until you see the third one. But oh yeah, I'll be there with bells on. I think, you know, I'm a little more anxious to see Howard Stern's new movie than...
Right, I haven't seen that one either. I did see this film this morning, Love Jones. Did you see that?
I've heard about it. I saw a trailer for it. It looked funny. Did you like it?
I like parts of it. I mean, it had good writing, and it's kind of similar to your film in the sense that, I mean, you have all these characters, and, you know, obviously there's two people, you know, male and female, who are going to get together and kind of fall in and out of love throughout the movie. But at the end of the movie, it had this 1 year later thing. And I thought, here's a chance for the film to redeem itself, because like your film, see, that was so perfect about it. It was like realistic. You always bump into the other person, you know, a year later, 2 years later, and it's always the grim realization of life. You know, it sucks for everyone equally, you know. And in this movie, that's like in 2 minutes they were hugging and they'd kiss and they'd gotten back together, and I thought, oh, you know, awful. And I think, you know, New Line is kind of in a position where they have a bunch of movies that appeal strictly to the urban market, and they're trying to strictly market them like that, but they made this film like it was kind of, you know, just about every other film about neurotics in love, you know. I mean, the people had no visible means of support, but yet they had, you know, I mean, great houses, you know. I mean, you know, I don't know anybody who lives in a house that big who's a photographer looking for work, you know. So stuff like that, and then the 1 year later, and they get back together, and it's just like, you know. But I mean, the film had some good writing in it, and obviously
the trailer seemed funny. Like the trailer had some good lines to it, and it was. What struck me is like, wow, it's a black film like I've never seen before. You know, it's not an urban gritty shoot 'em up, and it's not about the hood. It was about, you know, couples in love and stuff, and it's not like
that was the good part about it, but it did tend to concentrate. I thought it was going to be more of an ensemble piece at the beginning. It did tend to concentrate on the one couple, and it really had nowhere to go after a certain point. It's a little disappointing.
I'll bear that in mind.
No, I think you would be a good movie critic, just from seeing some of the stuff that's in, you know, like I'd like to see, you know, Kevin Smith pop up on CNN or something, give us the lowdown on Return of the Jedi or, you know, Empire Strikes Back, because, I mean, there aren't enough filmmakers, I think, that actively go to films, but you seem to be kind of along those lines, and you're going to be in Austin this weekend, and, you know, Richard Linklater's real... I mean, even before he was a director, he had this thing, the Austin Film Society, and they have one event a year where they raise money, and then they show free films every Tuesday afternoon. And of course, they've got a base of 50,000 people going to school there at UT, which is a little bit different than most major cities. But, you know, he strikes me as somebody who's constantly putting back into the system. Have you met him before? Or?
Yeah, Richard was the guy who, like, basically I saw Slacker, and I wanted to get into filmmaking. I was like, wow, you know, if this guy from Austin can do it, you know, why can't I do it? And so I did get to meet him with Clerks, because we share a lawyer, and also the guy that represented our film represented his film. So I met him through our friend John Pearson, and you know, he was a great guy and stuff. Older though, it struck me as odd that, like, we were 22 at the time or something, and he was in his 30s or almost 30, and there was definitely an age gap there, but really, really nice guy.
And so you're going to be on a panel with him, and they've got Tarantino and Rodriguez and Mike Judge, the guy that does Beavis and Butthead. That to me is like a powerhouse. I've never seen a seminar of that many, people in the same genre of filmmaking.
It'll be interesting. Yeah, I was kind of pleased to hear about it myself. And actually, it's like, I've met all of them except for Mike Judge, but I mean, we've never really, because I was on a panel with Robert once, but I was never on a panel with Quentin or Richard. And it's gonna be interesting to see what gets thrown at us, and I'm sure Quentin will dominate the panel with lots of chatter, because that's what he does best.
He's evidently a real Austin homebody. He did his own private film festival there. He's evidently got lots of copies of 35mm film, and he was showing like double bills of Burt Reynolds films and
right.
This film March or Die. And I should have just taken my vacation in Austin last year, because that's.
We gotta rock, guys.
Let me get a few words on. You have a website that you maintain, or I'm somewhat of a webmaster myself, but obviously
it's www.viewaskew.com.
Okay, that was at the end credits of the film,
Right, it was at the end
right?
credits. It's really, if you like the films, it's a great website.
But you yourself update the content.
Well, the content remains pretty much the same, but we have a board, like a www board, and people post questions, and I get on there usually twice a day and answer questions. So you stay really tightly in contact with people, the people who keep you where you are, more or less, the fans. And we're actually having a screening for the hardcore people who are at the board every damn day. Like in mid-March, back home in Jersey, we're throwing a screening of the movie.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah, because AFI, I think, is doing the silent films that they're running with their video streaming it. Are you using that technology, or
no? We're just having a screening of the flick. Oh, not on the website.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant put bits on.
We're having it in Jersey, and a lot of people are coming. Mm-hmm. It's interesting because there's people on the board. There's a dude coming in from Australia to see the flick because he's on the board a lot. People coming in from Alaska and California. The California thing boggles my mind because the movie opens there, and a couple weeks after they see it, they could just wait.
Right.
Jersey, it's kind of flattering.
Hey, flying to Jersey.
Flattering.
Well, another thing, at the very end of the movie, I noticed you thank Matt Zeiss, who was a.
Do you know Matt?
Well, I only met him once. He wrote for the Dallas Observer, and I met him at a function in Austin. And I know that paper either folded or he works for a paper in New Jersey, right?
Well, yeah, and he writes for the Ledger sometimes. He writes for the New York.
I was just kind of curious because, like everybody else, film critics obviously are egomaniacs, and I'm wondering, how does this one guy get, in the end of
He had written a really great review of Mallrats, and it wasn't even a great review of the movie, but he had written a very insightful piece on the movie. And it came at a time when, up and down the boards, everybody was just bashing the film, and he took the time to actually go into why he didn't think the film didn't work and what did work about it, and then also went back and took a look at Clerks. And he was saying, the thing about them is if you scrape away the attitude and the cynicism and the language and the jokes, they're both two just very sweet movies about guys that really, really want to fall in love. And he summed up the article by saying, I finally figured out why Silent Bob doesn't speak. He's afraid if he opens up his mouth, people will find out what a nice guy he is, sweet guy he is.
Which we find that out.
And it was just when I read that review, it was just wow, the guy, it was a perspective on what I do that I'd never, thought about or didn't want to really deal with, because I was like, well, I'm the guy that writes all the dick jokes, so that's what I do. And it kind of enabled me to let loose, not hold so tightly onto the, what put me there, which is that type of humor that's in Clerks, and actually kind of embrace another side, the more dramatic side, so which kind of, is way in evidence in Chasing Amy. So you still get the jokes, but you also get a lot more heart than were in the other two flicks.
When we see Superman next summer, will we see a little bit of your humor interjected there, perhaps subversively?
Very much so. As much as I can get away with on a PG movie, but yeah, there's a lot of. The movie's got a nice attitude to it. There's some real tongue-in-cheek moments. It's kind of self-referential, but it's very, while still very much being entertaining and not alienating. But there's just enough in there that you'll be like, oh, that's the Clerks guy wrote this.
We gotta rock, you guys. I'm sorry.
Lunch? Did you guys have lunch too?